There are sites across Oklahoma that are very popular with the living and the dead. Places where spirits linger in hopes of satisfying needs that can never be fulfilled. Is it just a cold spot in the room? Just the wind or a creaky board in the floor? Thousands of Oklahomans say it's something more.
It's one of those things whenever one person finally said, you know, this weird thing is happening, then everybody starts saying, I know.
Oklahoma ghosts are drawing tourists from all over the world in search of a thrill, a chill, and a chance to experience something they don't understand. Paranormal investigators are setting up inside places like Kendall's Restaurant in Noble, the Cain's Ballroom in Tulsa, and the Pumpkin Theater. Join us as we go fright seeing in Oklahoma. Ghost stories are as old as time itself, from the ancient Greeks to Shakespeare and Dickens. Everybody loves a spooky tale to set their hair on end. Hello. The state of Oklahoma is scattered with reported hauntings of every kind, and a growing number of researchers are looking for proof. As darkness falls on the town of Noble, restless spirits are moving inside Kendall's Restaurant.
What we're doing right now is we're actually setting up DVR cameras for our base, and this is the cameras that monitor various areas of the location. We do this so that way we can tell if there's any sort of movement that may happen. We can also see if there's any shadows, apparitions.
And we have a lot of different electromagnetic field detection equipment. Some of these are static arrays, which were actually constructed by the team.
We run cords to those, and we have a central monitoring system. It's a base system where our guy Gary actually monitors the cameras. He watches for movements, shadows, anything that shouldn't be there.
Some of those sweet potato fries over there. He was showing me $2.99.
Kim Locke and Dee Downer bought Kendall's Restaurant from Kim's mother after years of waiting tables and working in the kitchen.
We've had Kendall's for 26 years. It's just good old-fashioned American Oklahoma fare.
The restaurant is named after Kim's daughter, who started to avoid the children's corner at the back of the dining room.
Kendall didn't like to go to the back of the restaurant because the woman in black yelled at him.
The woman in black is called Margaret and is rumored to have died on the site many years ago.
They all describe her the same, as a woman somewhat unsettled and has a black dress on and black boots. And that's exactly what my daughter said that she saw when, 20 years ago.
Margaret was our shenanigan ghost. She would be the one to be like knocking the plate out of someone's hand or, playing with the kids.
A lot of the wait staff, a lot of the girls were always telling me that they felt things. I mean, that doors would open. They were scared to go to the back by themselves. And one girl would always say that she felt things in her ear.
The waitresses also have plates and things that's knocked out of their hands. They have a door back there that just swings open and opens on its own. They hear things. They've had their freezer door, open and food spilled out on its own when it's closing time.
There's definitely a child spirit, and that's something that's been going on for years. Is in one of our back rooms we have a play area, and a lot of the kids will play with someone that isn't there.
We have gotten her on audio recording. You can hear kind of like a child's voice in the background, and one audio recording we have that's very clear that was taken back in the back room when we were doing what we call a sit down, and that's basically where we monitor a room in quiet. We ask some questions, we see if we can get them to respond, and my audio actually caught this recording, and it's a little girl and she says, "Mommy," like that.
So we don't know if there was or wasn't, you know?
And it's very, very, very clear. So we do know that there's a child spirit here.
Was or wasn't, you know?
We have had 2 sets of parents that have asked not to sit back there because their kids say that there's a little boy or a little girl that they're playing with back there that obviously isn't there.
So what we would do is we would set up some toys in there, and we would mark the toys and set a camera on them to see if they're moved throughout the night. We have motion activated dolls and different things that we use when we know that there might be a child spirit present.
Christy Clark leads a team called Oklahoma Paranormal Research and Investigations.
I was very interested in the paranormal all my life and growing up, and just had experienced some strange things. So when I got up into my mid-20s, I decided to research the paranormal further, and so I formed my own team, and we have been around now for 13 years.
Page after page on eBay is devoted to ghost detection equipment, and there are over 70 paranormal investigative teams in Oklahoma alone. So, who are you going to call?
Used to, I would know all the names of the teams within Oklahoma, and now there's too many to kind of keep up.
Once a client calls with a sighting, the team starts by researching the history of the site. They usually have a waiting list and stay booked about 3 months in advance.
And an average investigation usually lasts anywhere from 5 to 8 hours, depending upon the size of the location and how many areas that we have to investigate.
That's the most fun a woman my age can have at that time of night. It's a lot of fun. It's they're great. I mean, I've watched those television shows, and it's fun. It's exciting. It's not scary. It's really exciting to watch them work, and when you see all the equipment coming out, and they're very professional. So it's fun.
We've not encountered any of them to be harmful or bad in any way. They're just kind of like here hanging out. They like this place, and so we're going to stay and stick around.
We have not had any negative talk. People seem to be just kind of really interested and want to know about it and ask, what stories that we have, and then tell stories that maybe that they've had, and it seems to be just fun. We love it. I mean, we love it. It's already here. We might as well embrace it, right? We say we're trying to get the ghosts to make some cinnamon rolls so we can put them to work.
With more and more places embracing their haunted reputation, ghost tourism is becoming big business.
I think each and every year they're becoming more of a bigger deal because people, I think, have always had an interest in the paranormal, the things that can't be explained.
Yeah, there's 65.
And sometimes we get a comment that says, we did take the tour out at Fort Reno. We were on the way out of town, and we decided to stop. So tourism itself is big business, and it's something that we're very proud of, and we use that to promote what we have here.
On their way back, all 3 cars broke down.
There's the paranormal investigating team of Tulsa. They have different locations that'll take you to some of and talk about some of Tulsa's rich history and some of the fascinating history of Tulsa.
Sorry, this one. Over the Vanguard is part of the original building because what they used to make way for horse and buggies.
Terry White started Tulsa Spirit Tours in 2003. For $10, the walking tour includes the Gilcrease Mansion, the Brady Theater, and other historic sites, but the first stop is the historic Cain's Ballroom.
I'd say Cain's is definitely in the top most haunted spots in Tulsa for sure. There's a lot of rich history here. There's a few ghost stories associated with Cain's. There's a urban legend about a woman in red. We call her the Lady in Red, of course, and she's actually been seen here by a former bartender that quit the night she saw her. I was told that she saw her standing at the end of the bar, totally transparent, could see right through her, and it startled the bartender so bad she quit that night.
The walls of the ballroom are lined with the portraits of the big names that played the Canes. For years, employees say they've seen a singing star that never left.
There is a legend that Bob Wills is still hanging out here, and I could understand why. He performed here for decades, you know, doing his live radio broadcast right here from the stage at the Canes, and they say that he still hangs around. There was a former stagehand here that said he saw him tapping his foot and kind of shaking his head on the stage. There's a lot of reasons I believe that spirits stick around. I think one of them could be unfinished business or, you know, confusion, things of that nature. But honestly, the Canes, I think they stay around because they like it. I think the energy here is awesome. And, you know, they had good times here, good memories, like Bob Wills. I mean, he had wonderful memories here. So I believe that he just likes to come back and visit.
Most ghost stories only have eyewitness accounts to back them up. The history of Tulsa's Hex House is well documented.
That was a weird story. That takes place back in the early 40s. A woman by the name of Carol Ann Smith held 2 women hostage in her basement for 8 consecutive years under what they called religious slavery. They found these girls in the basement, dressed very scantily, sleeping on egg crates, with over 200 pairs of shoes and enough makeup to fill up an entire drugstore.
A police investigation showed Caroline Smith was living off of insurance policies left by her father and her husband, who had committed suicide by shooting himself in the back of the head.
She was getting money from the parents and the families of these women and continued and lived a very lavish lifestyle. Everybody around her died. She had insurance policies on just about everyone, including the girls. So Tulsa police believed that she was going to kill the girls and get their insurance money as well. It was a really bizarre story.
The Hex House was demolished in the 1970s. The lot was covered over with sand and paved, leaving the basement where the 2 women were held captive intact.
Now, people that have parked on that lot have claimed a lot of weird things happening. There was instances where people claimed they'd come out to their car and the radio would be on, the car running with no keys in the ignition, windshield wipers going, things of that nature.
For years, Oklahoman reporter Steve Lackmeyer has researched the ghostly legends of Oklahoma City's past.
I will tell the ghost stories. I will share what I've heard, but not once have I seen evidence that any of these stories are true. They have some links to history. I don't believe in ghosts.
Every neighborhood has its ghosts, legends that keep children up at night and live in their nightmares. One Oklahoma City block seems tailor-made for terror.
Each of these ghost stories, there's no news account indicating that anything ever happened. Such is the case with Carey Place. Now, if you want to create a neighborhood where it's haunted, you want to come up with a ghost story, Carey Place is perfect because it's designed so uniquely. The houses are closer together. There's very small yards. The street is barely wide enough for an SUV. It's got great character. It's a memorable place. And you've got this house near Northwest 18th referred to as the Hatchet House. So this story has it that there was a girl who lived either at the Hatchet House or lived in Carey Place, and her name was Carey. Apparently her name was Carey. And this little girl got murdered with a hatchet. And her killers buried her body and hid it in one of these yards, and they painted the driveway red to cover up the blood and the evidence of her murder. Now you would think that this story might have gotten some press coverage. It's right across, the neighborhood's right across the street from Oklahoma City University. how could this escape the notice of the news media? And yet it did. And again, it's another ghost story. It's a bit morbid. It's just part of what makes a community tick.
As daylight turns to dusk, people are lining up outside the old post at Fort Reno.
I've fallen before and I can't pick myself up, so if I fall, you gotta pick me up. Rule number one, I can do that. If I go down, you gotta pick me up, okay?
On this evening, Ruth Ann Crawford is taking about 100 souls out to walk among the old buildings of the historic fort, all of them hoping to see a ghost.
We actually go on a tour through the parade area of the fort. We go to all the buildings that are still here and try to explain the history, as well as any paranormal activity that we're aware of that has gone on throughout the fort. We've been here, this is our second year here doing the tour, so finally we have some experience ourselves to share, and that makes us real excited.
At several stops on the tour, visitors are encouraged to walk up to the buildings, peek into the windows, and take lots of pictures in the hopes that something out of the ordinary shows up.
Every time we're out here, we have activity in one form or another. Every tour results in some sort of usually some sort of evidence. We've had some wonderful pictures taken by participants out here. We've actually had EVPs that we've recorded in the chapel. We've heard disembodied voices when we weren't recording. There is a lot of activity over by the commissary. There has been a little boy that frequents around there that, again, several people have encountered through the tours.
For Crawford and the other investigators, the tour is an opportunity to share what they have learned and to tell a scary story.
There is so much history attached to the fort, the cemetery, the people. We get a lot of history buffs that are here for the history, but I think most of the people that come here are hoping to see a ghost, and we hope they do too.
Gabriella's Italian restaurant in Oklahoma City has been known by many names. For many years, it was the County Line Barbecue. Long before that, it was called the Kentucky Club. The ghost stories here are all tied to this site's colorful past.
The Kentucky Club dates back to the earliest days of this city. The legend has it that you had gambling going on there back when cowboys were still around, and they were getting entertained there. And remember, we were not strictly prohibition until after statehood. We came in as a prohibition state. But before statehood, there was a lot of booze and a lot of brothels in this city. We had the red light district downtown. We had a lot going on. So this wasn't a perfect location for this sort of activity, because back then it's outside city limits. There's no police patrols. It's up in a very wooded area, up on a hill. But it's also near Route 66, so it's accessible. So if you're traveling, this would be a good place to stop if you enjoyed that kind of activity. There was supposedly a brothel on the first floor. You definitely had gambling going on there. You definitely had some gangsters going through there. There's Russell. Russell's supposedly a very friendly ghost. He was a gentleman about town, and he came in and he saw a girl that was just too pretty not to hit on. Unfortunately, this girl had a jealous boyfriend, her husband. He tried to intervene, a fight broke out, and Russell was killed in front of the fireplace. There's no news account of this happening whatsoever.
The Kentucky Club burned in 1945, just a few days after a gunfight between gamblers. When it was the county line, restaurant employees reported hearing strange noises and seeing racks of glasses vibrating above the bar.
You look at the history of this place, of these people, and you're thinking, well, it couldn't be true. And we all want to think there's something that's been withheld from us, a story that just our grandfathers and grandmothers didn't want us to know. So that's what makes these stories interesting.
On Main Street in downtown Ponca City is an ornate showplace. The Poncan Theater is a throwback to another time.
It's a historic theater, and Ponca City is so lucky to have a theater like this because in so many cities you've lost the Main Street Theater. And then we're lucky that it's an atmospheric theater. It was built in 1927 by the Bowler brothers, who built several theaters. It was a vaudeville house. It had a pipe organ, actors coming in on stage. Ethel Barrymore, Will Rogers performed here.
Charles Hall practically grew up at the Poncan. His parents bought the theater in 1947, and in 1967, his mother collapsed in the mezzanine and died at the age of 50. As the years went on, people reported seeing a woman in a certain spot in the balcony. Dave May was the director of the Poncan when he set out to make contact using dowsing rods.
So I started coming up the stairs, and it was when I started coming up the stairs that something really interesting happened. They did begin to move in my hand slightly. And I followed that movement. I let that guide me, and I went right up these stairs to a landing place on the balcony. At that point, when I hit that place, they stopped moving, and I didn't hear a voice, but there was, I don't even know how to explain it, a communication to me. There was just a sense of this is where I stood.
Several months later, Dave May decided to tell Charles he had encountered his mother's spirit.
So I took him up to this place on the balcony. I said, this is where I stood. This is what I sensed she was telling me, that this is where she stood. He was immediately amazed. He said, that is exactly where my mother always stood. I can see her standing there now.
His observations, and then that just coincided with Mom, and when she'd be looking for Dad early in the mornings, her going into the balcony was her best vantage point to call for Dad, and she needed him for something, and that was a unique experience. It made me feel good, kind of a closeness to the theater.
Another spirit has been seen in the balcony, a mysterious woman sitting in seat number 4.
The best photographic evidence of some kind of paranormal activity in this theater was taken during an investigation. No one saw it that night, but when they went to go through all of the photos they had, there's a photograph in the balcony. You'll see a couple of people, the back of their heads as they're sitting in the balcony. Those are the real people, those aren't ghosts, and it's black and white, taken at night with the lights off. But the thing floating in front of them is some unexplained possible apparition. Looks like a person walking. You can kind of make out the arm and whatnot in it, but no one can explain it.
Byron Tribble works late nights at the Poncan. He says he's heard ghostly music from a pipe organ on the stage, and one day he was working in the basement preparing a wooden sword for a children's show when he had a serious encounter.
I was rummaging through and I found a piece of wood that I thought would work okay. And I'll demonstrate. I pulled it out and I brought it up and I was thinking, that'll work. And the next thing I know, something flashes by me. I can even feel the wind or the sensation as it goes by me. And I seen it. And what I seen was that 2x4 there, which is about 3.5 feet long. And when I looked, it was still kind of bouncing like that. And if you'll notice, there's no place for it. I have some stuff here and I have some stuff there, but there was nothing. I don't know where that came from. That scared me.
Many people like to be scared. Whether it's the uneasy feeling that you're being watched or the chill in the air that wasn't there before, they like the adrenaline surge and the hair on the back of the neck to stand on end. and they will travel from far away to Oklahoma's most haunted hideaways to put their courage to the test.
The juggernaut where you can find out a lot of these things, you can go to travelok.com and actually type in Haunted Oklahoma. And it brings up articles and places that have regular tours. And if that's your particular interest, well, you can find out what's going on at a certain time and partake and have a good time.
So many people are afraid of dying and what's going to happen to them and where they're going to go. So I do think that paranormal research kind of makes people wonder, it kind of gives them a hope that there is some kind of life after death and some kind of a way to go on afterwards.
Even with the advancements of science and technology, our state is still filled with the mysteries of the unknown. There are so many legends, and not enough time to explore them all. Legends that still roam the aisles of the Pumpkin Theater and wander the grounds of Fort Reno. Maybe the spirits have come to enjoy the visiting tourists. Perhaps the ghosts at the Cain's Ballroom and Kendall's like making contact with patrons and the paranormal investigators. The true existence of ghosts and spirits may remain hidden for the rest of our lives. Until then, both believers and skeptics can enjoy the history and mystery found while fright-seeing in Oklahoma.
For a DVD copy of this program, please send a check or money order for $22.95 to the OETA Foundation, Post Office Box 14190, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73113. Or to place a credit card order, call 800-879-6382 during regular business hours.